hours.
The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. With the news at this time, I am Tiana Jordan. A very good morning to you. To begin the news, here is a look at the lead stories. The Guyana government has again found itself defending its track record to United States stakeholders. Police destroyed more than $100 million worth of marijuana. Regionally, a person of interest in the assassination of Haiti's President, Jovenel Moïse, has been arrested in Turkey. And internationally, a deadly storm has cut transport links around Vancouver, Canada. The details of these and other stories will be coming up right here in just a moment.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now the news in detail. Amid persistent claims by the opposition of discrimination against Afro-Guyanese, the Guyana government yesterday again defended its track record in talks with a visiting American delegation. The mission is from the United States National Bar Association. The government's Department of Public Information says Prime Minister Mark Phillips and Minister of Governance Gail Teixeira met the delegation. The Prime Minister reportedly informed the delegation of his government's inclusive approach to development and commitment to the rule of law, including strengthening the country's democratic systems. He was quoted as saying that since the People's Progressive Party took office, it has been implementing its manifesto in an inclusive manner. The senior government official said that his government's focus is also on strengthening the judicial systems and a range of socio-economic initiatives, including a robust housing program, job creation, and infrastructural development, which will ultimately lead to a better quality of life for all Guyanese. Minister Teixeira added that the country has made several progressive strides with regard to laws relating to sections of the society, such as women, children, and the LGBT community. She pointed out specifically that in August, laws against cross-dressing were removed as an offense against the state. Heading the delegation is the president of the National Bar Association of the United States of America, Carlos Moore. The visiting officials were also scheduled to meet with several other members of the government, members of the judiciary, and the Guyana Bar Association this week. The National Bar Association is the U.S.'s oldest and largest national network of African American attorneys and judges. It was founded in 1925 and represents the interest of approximately 65,000 lawyers, judges, law professors, and law students. The visit comes against the background of repeated accusations by the mainly Afro-Guyanese-supported opposition, a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, that the predominantly Indo-Guyanese-supported People's Progressive Party is practicing racial discrimination. Two Democratic congressmen earlier this year had called on the Irfan Ali-led government to be inclusive and to ensure adequate distribution of Guyana's wealth. The Guyana government has previously rejected those accusations. Police say they have destroyed $115 million worth of marijuana. The eradication exercise was carried out on Monday at Fort Nasser Berbice River. No one has been arrested. Police say they destroyed 120,000 marijuana plants and 450 pounds of dried marijuana. The plants, ranging from 1 foot to 6 feet, were being grown on 4 farmlands. Police say another 450 pounds of marijuana were found in a drying area. They were all destroyed by fire. The National COVID Task Force, NCTF, has authorized the reopening of the Guyana-Brazil border crossing at Lethem in Region 9 from Mondays to Fridays. The NCTF is in a release on Monday, November 15th, said the reopening of the border crossing daily from Monday to Friday takes immediate effect. Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, says the opening includes COVID measures to reduce the risk of transferring COVID-19.
This opening from Monday to Friday would allow for people to come across once they are able to produce their vaccination to show that they're fully vaccinated and that they have an antigen test or a PCR test that is negative. This is at all our border points. This is what we required. And at the border with Brazil, this is what we have put in place.
The crossing was closed more than a year ago following the COVID-19 outbreak here in March of 2020 and later restricted crossing to twice weekly. This had followed days of protest by Brazilians who had blocked trucks from leaving Bonfim in Brazil to come to Guyana to offload supplies. Guyana has recorded 56 imported cases of the virus. Those cases were not restricted to only cases coming from Brazil. Police say one of their female off-duty rank found a firearm in the compound of the National Insurance Scheme Linden office. Police say the female rank was at the time leaving the NIS compound in the company of her daughter when the child stumbled on the suspected firearm, which was stuck partly in the earth. The incident took place around midday on Monday. The firearm was handed over to police. Crime Chief Wendell Blanham says the investigative arm of the Guyana Police Force, GPF, is suffering from a shortage of investigators. The crime chief says the criminal investigation offices across all 10 regions of Guyana are weakened by a series of challenges.
There's an inadequate amount of investigators to police all 10 regions. And we have lost some investigators this year to retirement. A few of them we had to put before the court. And then we will have transferred some of them for disciplinary infractions. With the COVID situation, we weren't able to conduct criminal investigation courses to induct new entrants. We've also lost some of our investigators and some of the companies out there, the security companies I'm speaking about.
Mr. Blanham says to compound the challenge, the department is facing challenges with its own ranks becoming rogue.
We've had cases investigated by the Office of Professional Responsibility where police ranks, and this is not limited to CID ranks, they would have absented themselves from attending court and the matters were dismissed. We have had instances where a few ranks were found to be in collusion with criminal elements. Only recently, we had to prosecute a senior officer for trafficking in narcotics.
Mr. Blanham says the number of repeated offenders and the COVID pandemic have contributed to a testing period for the Criminal Investigation Department.
Repeated offenders, this is a matter of concern to us. They're being granted bail and then they reoffend. There's a high rate of recidivism in Guyana. CCTV images obtained from some of these crime scenes are of poor quality. And that's why we urge persons, business persons, to ensure that they have cameras of the highest quality.
The crime chief says the police force has made significant progress in solving several crimes. He highlighted the force's successes at a media briefing but steered clear on the progress of high-profile public interest cases like the killing of Orrin Boston and Peter Headley by ranks of the GPF. The Guyana Police Force currently has a complement of 5,000 uniform ranks. Daniel MacArthur, age 20 years old, a security officer of Lot 22 South Vrijslust, East Coast, Demerara, was jailed by Magistrate Dylan Best when he appeared at the Sparendam Magistrates Court. MacArthur, who was arrested last week at his home, where the firearm and live rounds were allegedly found, pleaded guilty on 2 counts of armed robberies and was sentenced to 2 years for each count. The sentence will run concurrently. The convict pleaded guilty to 1 count of illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition and not guilty to the other count of the same charge. He will spend the next 3 years and 6 months in prison. MacArthur will return to court on December 5th for the continuation of the not guilty plea for illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition. And now for the regional news. The head of the Leeward Islands Airline Pilots Association, LIALPA, is again appealing to Prime Minister Gaston Browne to request that the administrator of LIAT 1974 provide clarity regarding an October 8 meeting to discuss owed severance pay. Captain Patterson Thompson says in an Antigua Observer News report that the details of those talks would help trade unions and others make a decision on Browne's offer to pay up to 50% of the severance owed to ex-LIAT workers in cash, land, and government bonds. Captain Patterson Thompson says there were some issues in the offer that needed to be clarified that would possibly encourage more people to take another look at the offer. He says, at the end of the day, it is the right of an individual to accept or reject the offer. Unions representing former LIAT workers rejected the offer earlier this year, saying it was inadequate. The Prime Minister over the weekend claimed that the unions continue to refuse the offer, which will not remain on the table indefinitely. He also spoke out about other options the government is currently exploring. Prime Minister Gaston Browne says if the offer is accepted, the former workers could receive some financial support by Christmas. PM Browne says that the government hopes to use part of an approved loan from the Caribbean Development Bank to bring some relief to the embattled workers. However, this is dependent on the union's willingness to settle. Drug maker Pfizer Inc. has signed a deal with a UN-backed group to allow other manufacturers to make its experimental COVID-19 pill, a move that could make the treatment available to more than half of the world's population. In a statement issued on Tuesday, Pfizer said it would grant a license for the antiviral pill to the Geneva-based medicines patent pool, which would let generic drug companies produce the pill for use in 95 countries, making up about 53% of the world's population. The deal excludes some large countries that have suffered devastating coronavirus outbreaks. While Brazilian drug companies could get a license to make the pill for export to other countries, the medicine could not be made generically for use in Brazil. Still, health officials say the fact that the deal was struck even before Pfizer's pill has been authorized anywhere could help to end the pandemic quicker. Esteban Barón, head of the policy at the medicines patent pool, estimated that other drug makers would be able to start producing the pill within months, but acknowledged the agreement wouldn't please everyone. Under the terms of the agreement, Pfizer will not receive royalties on sales in low-income countries and will waive royalties on sales in all countries covered by the agreement while COVID-19 remains a public health emergency. Earlier this month, Pfizer said its pill cut the risk of hospitalization and death by nearly 90% in people with mild to moderate coronavirus infections. Independent experts recommended halting the company's study based on its promising results. A man said to be of great interest in the investigation into the murder of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse has been arrested in Turkey. According to the BBC Caribbean report, the businessman Samir Handel was detained at Istanbul airport where he was in transit from the US to Jordan. He is alleged to have links to Christian Emmanuel Sanon, a Haitian doctor who was arrested in July in connection with Mr. Moïse's murder. In total, more than 40 suspects have been detained. Haiti's Foreign Minister Claude Joseph thanked his Turkish counterpart on Twitter for the arrest of Mr. Handel. Mr. Joseph did not give any details of the allegations against Mr. Handel, but Turkish authorities say they had acted because Interpol had issued an international arrest warrant for the businessman. Mr. Handel had reportedly been living in Miami in the U.S. prior to his arrest. It is not known why he was flying to Jordan. President Jovenel Moïse was shot dead on July 7 by gunmen who stormed his residence in the Haitian capital Port-au-Prince. Many of those in detention are former members of the Colombian military, many of whom they were hired to provide security services in Haiti and were not told about a plan to kill the president. And internationally, the latest coming from the BBC World Service.
BBC News. Hello, this is Jerry Smith. Indian regulators have temporarily shut down several coal-fired power plants around the capital Delhi in an effort to tackle toxic smog. Meteorologists have warned that dangerous levels of air pollution are likely to persist. Here's Electra Naismith.
India's Supreme Court is demanding the authorities take urgent steps to improve air quality. Judges accuse state officials of not wanting to take decisions, but ministers in Delhi say any action they take will have a limited impact if neighbouring states don't act too. A limited lockdown in place in the capital region has now been extended. Its environment minister says government officials must work from home until Sunday. All construction work has also been banned.
2 days of torrential rain in the Canadian province of British Columbia has caused deadly landslides and floods, forcing thousands from their homes. At least one person was killed and others are still missing after a torrent of mud swept away cars north of Vancouver. Rail access to the city's port has been cut off. A top climate change scientist has raised concerns about the outcomes of the COP26 climate conference in Glasgow. Piers Forster from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change told the BBC he was dismayed at the lack of ambition shown by world leaders. He said that even at current temperatures, people were dying and species becoming extinct. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is meeting the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, one of Washington's key allies in Africa. It's part of Mr. Blinken's first trip to the continent since taking office. Our correspondent in Nairobi, Ann Soy, says the US is keen to address regional security problems, such as last month's coup in Sudan and the war in Ethiopia.
This administration is very, very much involved. We have seen them involved in the crisis in Sudan. We have seen them deeply involved in trying to resolve the crisis in Ethiopia. And those are some of the things that the Secretary of State will be discussing with the Kenyan president today and perhaps tomorrow during his visit here in Kenya. Recently, President Kenyatta was in Ethiopia to meet with the leaders there.
Reports from China suggest this year will see another sharp fall in the number of babies born across the country, despite measures to encourage couples to have more children. Michael Bristow has the details.
Statistics released by local officials across China show the same trend, fewer births. The latest figures from the city of Chuzhou in Anhui province reveal the birth rate dropped by 21% in the first 10 months of this year. Officials in Anhui have already warned that the birth rate is falling off a cliff. Similar figures have emerged from the provinces of Henan, Shandong and Guizhou. This year, China allowed couples to have 3 children to counter the decline in the number of newborns.
Michael Bristow. World News from the BBC. More than 100 public figures have pledged support for 6 Palestinian civil rights groups that Israel recently designated as terrorist organisations. Supporters include the star of the Avengers films, Mark Ruffalo, the singer Peter Gabriel and the author Philip Pullman. Israel maintains that the NGOs are a front for a small left-wing militant faction that's carried out deadly attacks. The group denies the charge. Poland's defence minister has warned that the crisis on the Belarusian border could last for months after another night of attempted migrant crossings. Mariusz Błaszczak told local radio that the situation would not be resolved quickly. From Warsaw, here's Adam Easton.
Poland's defence minister said it was not a calm night on the border. In 2 separate incidents, a group of about 100 migrants and another of around 50 tried to force their way over. Poland's border guard agency said some migrants threw stones, and in the darkness, Belarusian servicemen shone a laser at Polish troops to blind them. Both crossing attempts were thwarted. Poland insists that thousands of mostly Middle Eastern migrants camped out in freezing temperatures with limited access to food and water will not be allowed through.
Aboriginal rights campaigners have condemned a bill introduced in the state of Western Australia to protect Indigenous heritage. They say they'll have no right of appeal against government decisions on industrial development plans. The legislation is an attempt to deal with the controversy caused by last year's destruction of ancient rock shelters by the mining firm Rio Tinto. Azerbaijan says 7 of its troops were killed in renewed fighting against Armenia on Tuesday. The Azeri Defence Ministry said another 10 soldiers were wounded. The neighbours agreed to a ceasefire after Moscow intervened late on Tuesday. The border clashes killed at least 15 Armenians. BBC News.
The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return-to-work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner, with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now to end the news, here's a recap of the leads. The Guyana government has again found itself defending its track record to United States stakeholders. Police destroyed more than $100 million worth of marijuana. In regional news, a person of interest in the assassination of Haiti's president, Jovenel Moïse, has been arrested in Turkey. And internationally, a deadly storm has cut transport links around Vancouver, Canada. And that's the end of the news.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio Newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.